So in order to control exactly where all the skin weights go, the process I like to use is to actually collect all the skin weights and know where they are at the very start. So I'm not going to let Maya do any kind of guessing at how far from a joint it is going to affect the vertices in, say, the elbow or the shoulder area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force Maya to put all the skin weights all on one joint as a starting point. So you remember we've got this whole array of joints here in this list. We have the root, the hip joints, leg joints, all the finger joints. I'm going to put all these skin weights that Maya guessed at, and I'm going to put all these skin weights and put them all in one joint. The joint I'm going to place them on is the root joint, the very center root joint that's in the center of this character's body. So I'm going to select the root joint in our list of joints for the paint weights tool, and it currently only affects these vertices. So I'm going to take all the skin weights from all the other joints and place them on this root joint. So I'm going to select this root joint in this list, and then I'm going to come down to make sure I've got paint mode selected, paint replace, opacity set to 1, and the value, I'm going to be adding skin weight. So I'm going to take the value, set it to 1 or 100%, and then with that root joint selected, I'm going to click on this flood button. So what the flood button does is it controls all the skin weights for that one joint. This one joint is going to influence every single vertex on this character's body, 100%. I put all the skin weights on every one of these vertices. Root joint owns 100% of all the influence. So now if I go down this selection of all these different joints, you'll notice none of the joints light up the body now. None of these joints are affecting the geometry at all. They are all 100% controlled by this root joint. So I went and scooped up all the skin joints and placed them on the root joint. So now I know exactly where all the skin weights are. And that's my starting point. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go again with other parts of the process of 3D. You want to rough things in. Just like you're modeling things, you want to model a simple shape and progressively get more complicated and more detailed models. We're going to do a similar process with our skin weights. We're starting off with a very broad brush strokes. We're putting all the skin weights on the root joint, and then I will progressively break up the skin weights into these different chunks of the body, and then I will fine tune and adjust them afterwards. This process, again, is a tedious part of the process of skinning, so I'm not going to do the entire character. I'm going to focus just on one element of this character, and this is basically what you're going to have to do to all the other joints for the character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break off the skin weights. I'm going to start off with the arm and show you how I would progress from the arm by applying just the skin weights just to the arm and controlling where all the skin weights go for just the arm. In this process, I'm going to hide these control surfaces. These are just in the way, and they're obscuring my ability to select these components or the vertices for my character. So I'm going to go over to the menu, the display layer, and I'm going to hide the visibility of the controllers. We don't need them right now. All right, in order to break up and start removing, so what I'm going to do is I'm taking away like a banking system. I have all my money in the bank of the root joint. All my skin weights all my money is on the root joint right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to progressively do a withdrawal. I'm going to withdraw skin weights and break them up into each one of the different components. So I'm going to break off skin weights and withdraw them from the root and put them on just the arm. And then I'll break off just for the neck and the head, and then just for the leg. And then I'll progressively break it up into smaller chunks, and then I basically smooth the transition between those chunks. and that'll give me complete control over the skin weights. In order to control where these skin weights go, we need to discuss another tool inside of the paint weights tool that we haven't discussed yet. If you look in the paint weights tool and then the list of all these joints, to the left of all these joints you'll see these rainbow colored swatches, and then to the left of that you'll notice all these padlock shapes. So it's like a lock, it's got a little key area. These are padlocks. This is the key to controlling where the skin weights go. So when you have a joint locked down, you cannot add or remove skin weights to or from these joints. So because I know all these joints have no skin weights, only the root joint has the skin weights, I want to lock all these joints down. So I'm going to select the root joint at the top. So if I take the slider, go all the way to the top, if I highlight the root joint, and then take the slider all the way to the bottom, hold the shift key, and select the thumb joint at the bottom. So that'll highlight all the joints in between. And then if I just click on the lock shape, because all those joints are selected, I can turn on and off or unlock and lock all these locks all together. So now you'll notice the lock shape has turned yellow or orange shaped, and it has closed and locked up. So now all these joints are locked. So now I'm getting ready for my withdrawal process. I'm going to be withdrawing from the root joint and placing them on a specific joint. So for my first joint or first area, I'm going to start removing and giving skin weights to the bank. I'm going to bank skin weights to the arm. So I'm actually going to start at the shoulder. So I'm going to take skin weights that I painted on the root, I'm going to remove them and place them on the shoulder joint, and that'll start my process of adding skin weights back to the arm again. To do this, I'm going to have to unlock at least 2 joints. So you, at any one time in this process, you have at least 2 joints selected and unlocked. So you're either removing or adding skin weights. You're taking from one and putting on another skin weights on another joint. So you have complete control over what happens to these skin weights. Maya is not guessing. You are at 100% control over where these skin weights go. So at any one time, you have just 2 skin weights or 2 joints unlocked in the paint weights tool. Now at some point, you might open up a third lock. So in certain situations, you might need to bounce some weights in between perhaps 3 joints. So you might have 3 joints at some time unlocked, but you generally just want to have 2 joints unlocked so you really control what happens to these weights. So for the first joint I'm going to unlock is the root. So I'm going to go to the root joint and I'm going to click on that padlock and open up the padlock for root. And then for the shoulder, so I'm going to be placing my arm weights on the shoulder. So I'm going to come down to the shoulder joint. So his left, so it's L. I know it's hard to tell what's happening here, which joint I have selected because it's not highlighting anything. So if you go down to L, shoulder, J, so that's the left shoulder joint, we're going to unlock that joint. So the shoulder joint and the root joint are unlocked, and that's the starting point. So now I'm going to highlight in the paint weights tool, I'm going to highlight the shoulder joint because I'm going to be stealing weights from the bank of root, and I'm going to be transferring them over to the shoulder. Well, actually the clavicle. I forgot there's the clavicle. So we actually want to put them on the clavicle.